Welcome back to Paranormal Perspective. I'm John Lordan, and joining me as always
It's Christy Arnhart.
Christy Arnhart. Now, you're not alone. We actually do have another guest with us. Her name is Gwen Barringer. She is a friend of the channel. She writes on Seriously Mysterious. She's done research on numerous things. She helps other shows as well. Gwen, welcome to Paranormal Perspective. Can you tell us why you're here?
Oh, happy to be here. I'm here because I also, in addition to the many other things I have on my plate, read tarot cards and do tarot readings for people.
Oh, okay. And that's going to tie into today's topic. Christy, tell us about it. What's today's topic and what's the question for the audience?
Well, today we are going to look at the history and the use of tarot cards. And we're not going to do a tarot reading, and I'll explain why when we do this. But my question for everybody is, do you believe the tarot can give you meaningful insights into your life?
Okay. All right.
I know when you look into the history of tarot, you'll hear people say that, it's been around since the time of ancient Egypt and things of that nature. It really hasn't. Divination has been around since, I would say, the beginning of time. But tarot, as we use them today, they didn't exist that way until the 1430s. And they were actually, I believe it was Spain that they were invented in.
Okay.
And what they did was they took an existing deck of cards and they added another suit to it. Now, this other suit is called the Triumphs. And when they're added to the pack, they act as a suit that's superior in power to the other four suits that are in there. Each one of these cards bears a specific symbolic illustration. It also has an unmarked card that's added in, and that one is considered to be the full card. It doesn't have a number. And it's different from the Joker card that we have in our decks today. So these cards were such a hit, they don't even stay in Italy. They traveled all over Europe. And depending on who was creating these cards and using them depended on just, exactly how they were used, the little differences here and there.
Was
and
the
some
intent,
of these cards are...
Was the intent some form of fortune telling right off the top, or was it originally intended to be like a twist on a game?
From what I understand, it was games.
Okay.
That there were tarot games that you played.
Okay.
And, each of these, it just depends. The cards are always depending. You can make your own cards. Some people use gold foil. I mean, they are just beautiful the way they're illustrated. It's really nice. And it caught on really big all throughout Europe. Now, in the 1780s in France is where they started to use them for more occult things, for divination and things like that. But you really have to have someone who's experienced with these cards, not just with the concepts, but with their own decks. They understand the meanings behind each card, because you may pull out the death card. Well, the death card doesn't mean you're going to die. It's more, you'll have a change in your life, the death of something. Maybe it's your job. But even with that, doors are opened up for you to do other things. So, I don't see it as a negative card at all. Never really have.
Do you practice tarot as well?
Do what?
Do you practice tarot? Do you do readings?
No.
Okay.
I've had a set of cards that I have played around with for like 20 years, and I never could really connect with it. It's complicated. You've got 78 cards that are divided into two groups. You've got your major arcana, which are the 22 trumps, or you've got the minor arcana, which are the 56 regular cards that are usually in there. And when you lay these cards out, which it's more than just laying them out, but I'll get into that. When you lay these cards out in your spread, you have to, they may come out upside down, and that's fine. If the card's upside down, that's a different position. It has a different meaning because it's inverted. and learning all of that. I mean, it's a lot to take in. I mean, just looking at the regular cards in the deck, your clubs are your wands, batons, and rods. Hearts or cups, spades or swords, and then your diamonds are coins, pentacles, things of that nature. Then you've got, 4 court cards, which is the king, queen, knight, and jack. It gets complicated. And each of them deals with something different, and this isn't even taking the major arcana in. I'm still just talking about the minor here, because if you look at it, they all deal with regular, everyday things. Like swords is dealing with conflict. Coins is dealing with money, material things. Cups with love, wands or career ambitions, business. So for me to keep track of that was a little bit too much.
Okay.
I had a good friend who actually bought me a deck. It was the Mother Earth Tarot, I believe. And it was a beautiful set that I never really could connect to. And about a couple of months ago, my puppies knocked them off the desk and somebody pooped on them. So I don't have those anymore.
I would say that's not a good connection. Gwen,
No,
is
it
it
made me very
important?
sad.
Yeah. Is it important to have a connection with that particular deck, Gwen? Can you tell us more about that?
Honestly, yes. I've had some decks that I've opened and never used just because something about the energy of the cards was off. They didn't really resonate with me as far as the artwork, the interpretations that were given, because honestly, as far as the interpretations of the cards, different decks can also point out different things. So I believe that the deck that you're kind of referencing as far as the major and the minor arcana, the one that you would probably be most familiar with, Christy, is the Rider-Waite deck.
Yes.
And that's one of the most popular tarot decks out there. And many decks are based off of Rider-Waite. But there are definitely some that don't exactly play by those rules. And those are kind of the ones that I usually end up gravitating towards quite unintentionally, might I add.
Well, they're speaking to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big thing, when you go in and you want to have, your future read or whatever it is you're taking into this experience, you'll be given the deck to shuffle while you think about your question, and you're putting your energy into it, your intent. Then you have the person, who lays them out, who actually interprets them. And those, like she said, those are cards that they use, that they're familiar with, that has their energy, that speaks to them. It all has to work together.
And
I had a friend who had a...
Go ahead, Chrissy.
I had a friend who had a vampire tarot, and nobody wanted to use her cards. The energy from them, whatnot, we were all like, nah, I don't care for that one.
Yeah. Gwen, is there more than one set that you use in your practice? And if there is, what decides what set that you're going to use?
Yeah, so the one that I am most familiar with, as far as the one that I use most often when I'm reading for people who are kind of outside my close circle, so clients, customers, that I don't necessarily know that well. I have one specific deck that I will use for them, but then I also got this deck here. I'll show you. Color cards. And these are not specifically tarot, but I do like to kind of blend these with the tarot cards sometimes to emphasize some of the lessons that are inherent in whatever reading I'm doing and some of the guidance. Basically, it has a color that corresponds with the message, and I usually tell my clients to hold that message in their mind throughout from that time on until the next time they call me, simply because it helps to kind of boil it down into a single sentence for some people. It helps to kind of give them something to reflect on, to take away, that isn't going to fully overwhelm them. And I know some other readers that use, angel cards. Some may use oracle cards interspersed with their usual tarot deck. There's really a variety of way to do things as far as tarot is concerned.
Christy, do you have more history on it, or are we ready for kind of discussion?
No, not really. I was just going to talk about, I know for me personally, I love to have tarot readings done, but I'm not good at giving them at all. What really works for me are Viking rune stones.
Okay.
You'll get a pack of I believe it's 25 stones. You can get them in semi-precious. That was for an amethyst. And you have a bag. You hold the bag in your hand. You move the stones around. You think about what your question is, what your intent is for using them. Then you reach in, I think it was 5 stones. You grab 5 stones and lay them out in a simple pattern. And I don't believe that these tell me my future, but I think the fact that you're sitting down, you're thinking about these things deeply, you're meditating on them, you're putting your energy and intent into it. And I think that gets reflected in what you lay down or you pull out of the bag. I think it's a lot to do with energy. A lot.
Okay. So I guess, is there a paranormal component to this? In your opinion, Christy?
I would say yes, because even though we talk about, energy in ourselves, energy in stones, that's not something that's widely accepted or believed in. And it's still, in the paranormal.
Yeah. Okay.
Because, I believe I can feel the energy from plants and animals very easily. And those are the things I tend to excel with more than people. And, those things to a lot of people, it sounds like a lot of bunk. But to me, no. Energy is a very real thing.
Well,
your intent.
I deal with cats a lot, obviously. Outside of the 4 that I have here at home, I also do volunteer at a no-kill shelter. And I can certainly attest to how important energy is, and reading them. Maybe in a way it's similar to tarot. Just being able to read their body language and know how to approach them based on how they're responding. Like, there's a lot of... it's strange because sometimes we'll hear about adoptions that happen out of the shelter and things won't go quite right. And the stories that you hear, you're like, oh, well, they overstimulated the cat. They obviously didn't know to look for this or look for that. So for me to hear about that energy is potentially being used to help guide a conversation with someone about something tough in their life or about a change that maybe they need to come through. I don't know how I could invalidate that. I don't think there is any way to. Gwen, do you have some thoughts? It looks like you're chomping at the bit.
Yeah. So actually, I did kind of want to just say that I do tend to, rather than saying that I'm like a psychic or anything like that, because I do know that there are a lot of tarot readers out there who will call themselves psychics. I prefer to use the terms intuitive and energy reader, because yes. I pick up on the energy of the situation. And as far as like my clients go, I just kind of have a very unusual way of reading, simply because I don't really play by the book. I play by the energy. And there's no book when it comes to dealing with people's energy. Some people are really, really messy.
Yeah.
And that shows when I'm trying to look into their situation and give them the insight that they need. And I mean, I'm pretty blunt. I kind of lost my temper with a client the other day just because they weren't listening. And I finally had to lay it down on them and just be like, okay, call me back in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because we're not getting anywhere with this today. I keep repeating myself, and you are just not actively listening to what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a combination of reading the cards, reading the energy, and just being able to give the client a firmer grasp on their situation as a whole. sometimes some readings that I do feel more like glorified therapy, with a
Yeah.
little bit of extra spooky on the side. Like,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting
it
because
really varies.
I really appreciate how you're talking about it as being more like therapy, and trying to communicate something to someone that maybe doesn't want to hear that, because as opposed to horoscope, like, and I do occasionally like check out my horoscope. It comes up in my news feed or something like that. Like, I wonder what it's going to tell me this time. And largely horoscopes are, at least based on my interpretation of them, most of the time it's like, hey, things are going to be really good, or oh, things are going to be a little rough for a bit, but then things are going to be really good. Like, there's always this positive kind of aspect of, and I think that's, when I think about manipulating people, I think there's two really easy sells. One of them is to sell them on anger, which is the easiest. That's why you see it in media used so often. But the other is to sell them on, oh yeah, this is going to help you. Things are going to get better because of this. So it's interesting to me to hear you talk about tarot in this way, because it's not offering that. You're not getting on the phone with these people and saying, oh, the cards are telling me that you've got a giant, bonus coming in your paycheck next week. Which, and as for a conversation where you're having someone who's not really hearing you and hearing what you're trying to lay out for them, it'd be way easier to just be like, oh yeah, okay. You're able to read them. You're able to read that their energy isn't quite lining up with what you're trying to tell them. You could make the decision at that point, okay, I'm just going to back off this, or I'm going to make a left turn and tell them what they want to hear. And you're not. It's like there's a level of responsibility that you have to the practice that you're doing. And I think that's really admirable.
Like, I do know that there are some other readers that go through the company that I work through, that will do that false positivity, live, love, laugh crap, basically.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I refer to it as. And I've just never been that person. Even when I was just studying tarot, 20 years ago when I first started, I've always kind of tried to balance the light of the situation with the dark of the situation. It's about balancing, managing your expectations, and kind of bringing the client back to the reality of the situation in a way. Now, there are some people that aren't receptive to my methods. I totally understand. You called me because you want me to tell you what you want to hear. I'm not going to tell them what they want to hear. I'm going to tell them what they need to hear. And, I can't say for one way or another whether there truly is a paranormal aspect to what I'm doing, but I will say that I do thank the powers that be. I'm not going to give them names just because,
right, what I
there's
call
so many
something
out there.
Yeah
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I just thank the powers that be before I do a reading and after I do the reading. It's polite.
Yeah.
If they're involved in any way, it just seems like, hey, I respect y'all and allow me to work as your interpreter to interpret this situation.
Yeah. So
that's really basically all it is.
We have Gwen, who does tarot reading. Christy, have you been read? Have you had someone do a reading for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And this is something that I think you guys might find surprising if I didn't tell you already, which I'm sure I did, but I have had a tarot reading very recently. Actually, it was within the past year. And I went to New Orleans, was having fun, just a night out with my wife, and there might have been a few drinks involved. And I'm walking down the street, and there's a table set up in the middle of a street. Like, it's, a street that cars should be driving on. This guy set up a table. He's sitting at the table. He is dressed up in basically an outfit like he was from Carrie. Like, he was wearing the white dress with blood all over it, and he had cowboy boots. His name's Lucas. I'll never forget him. And he did a reading for both of us. And quite honestly, I've been through therapy, and it felt very similar to that. It felt like almost like a sped up version of therapy. Like when you sometimes get with a new therapist, you have to like unpack all this stuff and explain your story. And sometimes it could take like weeks to just go through that process. Lucas didn't have time for doing any of that. So it's interesting that there's this mechanism of using the cards to kind of jump into these conversations in the middle almost. It's like there's this presumption he's seeing from the cards about like, oh, you must be dealing with some issues around your family because this thing's coming up. When are you going to talk to your dad? Or, just all of a sudden you're jumping into the middle of a conversation where it's like, if I was doing this with a therapist, it would take us weeks to actually get to that conversation. So I found it really enlightening, very interesting. I do think there's a really important aspect of the person being an empath and being able to read the energy off other people, but maybe honestly, I feel like maybe there's more to it than that even. Like there's some of the information was just so on point. And I don't think, because I'm a little bit of a skeptic in this area, I don't think that I put out very strong indicators. Like I don't think I'm sloppy about, he says something about my family member or something like that, and I go, like some big obvious thing on my
like
face.
I'd be like,
right. And then he's like, oh, that's right. Yeah. You've got to watch out for your brother. Like, I don't think I'm tipping him off like that, but I had a really, really good experience with it. And I don't know if that would be the same for everyone out there, but honestly, I can't knock it. I think going into it with an open mind, even if you are sitting at a table in the middle of the street in New Orleans, I had a good experience with it, and it sounds like it could be a good thing for some people to maybe just hash out some things going on in their lives. Gwen, is there much in terms of directing people in terms of what they should or shouldn't do? Is that a big component in your work?
So as far as my work personally, yes, I do try to do in a bit of imparting advice, imparting direction, but only if the cards are kind of giving me that indication. That's the thing. Not everybody wants direction.
Yeah.
Some of them just want to talk about their issues and vent to somebody, in all honesty. Like I've got a couple regulars who don't necessarily want to confront the people that are bothering them, but they just need somebody to, talk to them about whatever the interpersonal issue is within their marriage, within their parental relationship. And, that's fine. I will, look at the situation from my perspective and get kind of where we can meet in the middle as far as this person being able to see the situation a little more clearly, I guess. Providing guidance and clarity are two very important things.
What can be better than people just trying to help other people using whatever tools they have, right? I mean, that's ultimately what it's coming down to. Well, we put it to the live audience. Can tarot give you meaningful insights? Yes or no? 67% of them say yes. And I think I agree. I think I'm in on that as well. Ladies, thank you so much for sharing all this with us here today. We really appreciate you guys. And thank you for watching. Please join us again next week. We will be here. We'll see you on the other side.